When I made my podcast on Sylvia Plath's poem Electra on Azalea Path, one of the lines I paused over and savoured was, "The day your slack sail drank my sister's breath." It's a line that compresses the story of Electra's sister, Iphigenia, who was sacrificed by their father Agamemnon when his ships were lost at sea. So he sacrificed Iphigenia, and then the winds picked up, obliged him, and he could carry on his way. So the day your slack sail drank my sister's breath, as if it filled up with Iphigenia's expiring death rattle, I thought was a really sort of neat, clean way to compress that story into one line. And I think Plath might have been following in footsteps of Dylan Thomas here. There's a stanza from his poem Ballad of the Long-Legged Bait, which also has to do with a woman being sacrificed to the sea. There's no mention of it in this stanza, but listen to these four lines. "Sails drank the wind, and white as milk, he sped into the drinking dark. The sun shipwrecked west on a pearl, and the moon swam out of its hulk." So a couple of Plathian hallmarks there in imagery to do with pearl and the moon, but pertinently for this instance, the imagery of sails drinking the wind as they drink the breath of Iphigenia in Plath's poem. Knowing how much of a Dylan Thomas fan Sylvia Plath was, I'm pretty sure she had that stanza in mind as she wrote Electra on Azalea Path, or at least that line of it. And I was thinking about this more reading an essay called Aspects of Energy in the Poetry of Dylan Thomas and Sylvia Plath by D.F. McKay. A really interesting essay, begins by addressing ways in which both Thomas and Plath are criticised, namely that they're both called meaningless and deranged, yet neither of them lack vitality. And McKay puts this down to the fact that both of them are alive to the existence of a primal energy or divine power, a power that is at once creative and destructive. McKay finds such an energy animating Plath's poem Ariel. There is just such a divine, creative yet destructive power in the line Cauldron of Morning. And it's a similar power that he says Dylan Thomas is describing when he writes, "The force that through the green fuse drives the flower." Now, one of the differences McKay picks out when it comes to Thomas and Plath describing this primal energy is that the relative formal coherence of Thomas's poems tends to register this force as operating outside of the poet. It's something observed. It can be observed with a level of calmness. There is a disassociation between the speaker and the force, whereas Plath tends to identify with this force. It runs through her. It is unpredictable and often unnatural. Now, McKay doesn't mention the lines I quoted at the start of this video to do with sails drinking the wind, but he did mention something that made me think of it. He said that Thomas's metaphors exemplify the reassuring regularities of destructive and creative force, pulsation, systole and diastole, inhalation and exhalation. But in Plath's poetry, power can surge as suddenly as an opened artery. It suggests a breach of the natural order. Now, if we permit man-made sails into the natural order, we see that in Thomas's poem they inhale just as they should do. They inhale the wind. Whereas in Plath, what they inhale is the breath of a murdered daughter, a sacrificed daughter and sister of the speaker, someone, in other words, that the speaker of the poem relates to. Notice as well that the scale of the breach in the natural order, a father sacrificing his daughter, is matched by a proportionally unnatural release of energy. Somehow, those expiring final breaths of Iphigenia have filled the sails of a ship.